But my name is Stephanie Vavanese with Brew Recruit. I have my colleagues, interns, Jesse and Kate here. But we launched last night at the Hollow, this new division. But I started SMV recruiting 5 years ago, and I've been recruiting since I got out of college in 2006. So it's really all I know. My hope is really that this is going to be informal and conversational, so please just interrupt me if I'm talking, if you have something you want to ask questions about. If you guys are dealing with something and you want any advice on it, please just raise your hand, or you're welcome to interrupt me. But they asked me to talk to Paul, and he was asking me if I could talk about recruiting and hiring in a post-COVID world. I think that's really the theme that is out there these days, or people are really struggling to hire. I'm feeling it. I've never been busier. And so I just kind of wanted to walk through, from my perspective, we've done a little bit of research as well to get some support. Oh, okay, I'm Steph. Anything we need to do or special? Oh, you want to? It doesn't matter. I don't have an intro, but. Yeah, thanks. Hello. We have, up here we have some packets if you want to jump up and you can follow them along. But, so today, I haven't practiced this, so hopefully it doesn't run too long or too short, but we're going to follow and talk about, what does the current hiring landscape look like? What's causing the Great Resignation? How recruiting candidates has changed over the last 2 years, kind of how has COVID impacted these things, and the lasting impacts of that. I think a really big thing right now is companies retaining people too. I don't know if you guys are feeling that, but the Great Resignation, people are leaving. So what can you do to retain people and keep them on your team? And what you guys need to do, not just to retain people, but to stay competitive in this landscape. And I think another big thing about this that you should spend some time on is benefits. Like, what are the benefits that we need to be thinking about, maybe you haven't done, or what I'm seeing in the market? A large part of that is mental health support with everything going on that you want to think about. Talk about some diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then kind of conclusion, where we are. So I know a few more have joined us. If you haven't joined us, if you want to raise your hand, we can bring you packets back if you want to follow along. Okay. 1, 2, 3 in the back. So just to get an idea, I asked this earlier, but how many people here are hiring managers or just in a position to hire? Okay. How many people here have open positions? How many people have had open positions for more than a month that they can't fill? It's not as many. Okay. What has been pain points for you guys when you're hiring? What are you guys feeling, or what'd you say? Housing. Okay. Where are you located? Okay, yeah. A little expensive out there. Not so much upstate. Lucky. What else? Are you guys getting applicants? Not applicants. Okay. How about, so quality? When you're getting applicants, are they quality? Okay. Oh, ghosting is a huge thing right now. I think, have you seen much, I know it's just been really last couple of weeks, but since COVID, really feels like we've kind of crossed that line that you're seeing more people? No. Yeah. So, all right. So I to those things, but I think since December, I think it's actually gotten a lot more competitive from my point of view, and it's harder to find people, and people are going off the market. So, what does the hiring landscape look like? Can you grab them? All right. So I have some stats. I printed everything out. I'm not doing a PowerPoint. I'm not a fan, but you can read through these, go through these with me. If you have any comments, happy to hear your thoughts. I think the whole value here is to share, so you don't just have to hear from me. But so the U.S. Labor Department has shown that there's 4.2 million fewer workers in the labor market than there were pre-COVID. So, and it's the lowest it's been in 20 years. And we have the highest level of job openings that we've seen in a long time. As of September, we had 10.9 million open. So you don't have the pool, 50% less. And we've had a ton of resignations, and a lot of these people are leaving and they're not coming back to work. I'm seeing that they're opening up their own. They're going consultants, 1099s. They have a lot more flexibility this way. And Millennials really like that idea because it keeps them changed and engaged, and they feel like they're learning a lot more skills. So I think you're going to see that as a trend. But like we just talked about, recruiting for a lot of people has never been harder. You're not getting enough applicants. And then when you really do find a good applicant, they're getting multiple job offers. I mean, it's like so real. And then they ghost you. You give them a great opportunity, you give them the great offer, they come back. Even if you counter them to meet the counter, they're still going. And even if they come, it doesn't mean they're going to stay. So people are investing a lot initially. And then I just placed a CFO for a company in the summer, and he just got a $20,000 raise. And he got a $20,000 raise to come here from $100,000. So it's significant money. So it's there. And then the other thing is, because these positions have remained vacant, I think a lot of people during COVID wasn't sure the trajectory of positions, teams, and whatnot. So a lot of the employees have been picking up that work. So you guys really got to be conscientious. If you're not, you probably are. But thinking about, like, be empathetic to them. They are probably getting a lot of burnout, stress. They've been working from home. Now if you want them to go back into the office, you know, we've all adjusted to this, right? I mean, a lot of people like it. Personally, I'm a very social person, so being home alone was not my favorite thing. So very glad to be back into the office. But, you know, it's different, and so people have to adjust to it. The kids are adjusting to it. I really think, you know, I read a couple articles talking about the war on hiring, and it's real. Like, these counter offers are coming all the time. If you haven't dealt with it, you're lucky, but they will happen. Ghosting, I've never seen people ghost more in my life. Like, at the professional level. Managers down to people on the plant floor. You know, I've been recruiting, so I started SMV recruiting 5 years ago. So Brew Recruit is new. Just last 4 years, I've been getting more into the beer industry, but I've been recruiting permanent placements for the last 7 years strictly, and had my own thing for 5 years. So we place people in manufacturing up to the C-level suite. So this past year, we got really into manufacturing. I actually worked on site at a client for 2.5 months, just entry-level maintenance people, assemblers. So I feel like that's a large part of, you know, in the beer industry, what you need. And we just couldn't believe how many people just wouldn't show up to work, took a break, left. So I just think that competition out there, people just think there's so many options for them that they will have one foot out the door unless you really create an awesome space for them to be in. And then I think, you know, people who are working from home also are feeling a little bit detached, right? If you're not going above and beyond to keep them engaged or having weekly meetings, and when you guys do these meetings, I really encourage video meetings and making people have, it's funny, I like to have the video on as well as the speaker on. If there's going to be noise in the background, then turn it off, but people can hide behind that. And it keeps you on your toes if you have the speaker on. And then the other people, like if you're working from home, other, you know, employers are feeling like the term is tethered, you know, they're 24/7, they have to always be on. So I don't know. I didn't really feel like that. I felt like it was great to turn off it, but, you know, people also are getting a lot more work done. Besides that, a lot of movement in the market, as you're seeing, skills shortage for sure. And as I was talking about, people who are leaving are doing startups. There's 4 times the amount of startups who's happened in the last year than previously. So that's the 1099ers, I think. Not necessarily a full-blown business per se, but people going out on their own. Fast forwarding 8 years, Korn Ferry, which is a really large high-end recruiting firm, they've suggested by 2030, the global economy, not just the U.S., will be short 85 million workers. So I think about this in your long-term plan. When you are planning, think about how can you retain people, and this is a little bit later, but the importance of training, developing training, paying for education. You have someone who has potential. I really encourage you, if they don't have the skills but they have the potential, they have the personality, move forward with that person. Like, take a risk, and people appreciate that. I think that builds loyalty. Like, a lot of times they're like, well, they don't have X, Y, Z. No, but they have a great personality. So if they have a really good personality, I think that's going to go a lot further. And that's the other thing that's going to lead to your company culture. And people really care about that these days is the company culture. Do they fit in? Do they feel valued? And if you find the people with the right soft skills, pretty much you can teach them. It might be a cost, but I have some other quotes in here later about really you can look at and see if you're investing in someone's education, they're far more likely to stick with you. So the other thing is, people are also, I think, recruiting, well, it helps me, but as you might see, if you're home, it's easier to talk on the phone. It's easier to take a recruiting call. It's easier to have an interview. You have that flexibility. That goes both ways, but I think you're seeing that. The interviews are, I do video interviews all the time now. It's helped me tremendously. I hope you guys do those video interviews. Everyone's gotten extremely used to them. We use Google Meets, so it's a very simple platform. It's free, right? So if you don't have Teams or you're not set up for it, you can just send people a Google Calendar invite. It's great. Very clear, no issue. People don't have to download a ton of stuff. Most people have it. So if you're going to do, let me ask you this. How many people here are doing video interviews? Not many. Okay. I think they're great because, first off, super timely. People don't have to get there on time. They can take it from their car. They can take it from home. And I think we've gotten a little bit more real, right? If there's a dog in the background or a kid, I don't care. I really appreciate that you made time to talk to me. If you're not doing it, you guys should, because to have someone come in on site, okay, at least the first interview. I think you do want to meet them if you can. If you're working on site, have them come in. But if not, do the video interview. It's easy. People are on time. It is funny, though. Being these video interviews, you think you have like 5 few minutes if they're coming a little bit late. No, they're right there on time. So sometimes I jump on, just a suggestion, but I'll turn off my video and my speaker and I'll just send a message, say, hey, I'm wrapping up a phone call. So they don't get discouraged and you acknowledge them. And so those are good. Definitely have your video on. You want your face in the center. If you don't do that often, you don't want your head up and your neck cut off, and it gets to be annoying. So keep that in mind. If you do this, think about training teams. Like, practice a little bit. Tell your team what you want, what you expect from that. And then, as we talked about, I think the biggest landscape shift is this desire to work remotely. People want to work remotely. They like it. And this is really shifting the landscape and the candidate pool. Because if you think about it, this has been happening to me repeatedly. Like, I have architects and engineers. It's something I've been working on a lot lately. And I'm competing with New York City salaries, DC salaries. So many people are now able to work remotely. So what was just a Syracuse central pool? No. Now, New York from across the country are recruiting them. And so what was a great salary for Syracuse, you're now competing with a New York City salary or, DC salary. So this is bumping up salaries. So I think that's really important. So just be aware of that if you haven't seen it, if you haven't been recruiting, or if you have, you got to really think for, I know people are anxious to get people back into the office, but do they really need to be in the office? And if you're struggling with filling a position, and it's sometimes more of a case-by-case basis, which then creates biases in the workforce, but it's also going to, if it's going to prevent burnout from another employee, you might see a shift there too. People might be more willing to do it or be accepting of some peers doing it so you can get these positions filled. Yeah, so 18% of organizations that require people to be on site, only 18% reported that they were having success in recruiting versus 46% of people who are willing to have people remote. And then 23% of on-site organizations were rated as effective in recruiting top talent, but 47% of remote organizations were more effective. Per SHRM, 93% of those in the hospitality, food, manufacturing, customer service industry are really struggling to hire entry-level positions. All right. Any questions, comments on that? All right. So what's causing the Great Resignation that we're all stressing about and feeling? To go through this a little bit briefly, I think baby boomers, a lot of them are retiring a lot earlier than were expected, right? You had COVID, why am I working, right? Family was becoming an issue, so a lot of people retired early, which caused a lot of brain drain. And it wasn't passed down. So that's been an issue, and I think people weren't expecting these retirements, so they didn't actually prepare all the all the manuals and whatnot, so you could easily pass that stuff down. But then parents who have kids have decided to stay home. Childcare has been a huge issue. It was a huge issue during COVID for people who were, hourly employees who couldn't work from home, and that's who's primarily affected. If you think about this, the inability to work from home, it's hourly employees, unfortunately, for the most part. And then, so childcare is huge. It's gotten really expensive. Another big thing is people, and you guys might be doing the same thing, they are working. They're no longer living to work, they're working to live. And quality of life, feeling of content, happiness, appreciated, that's what they're looking for, and that's what they want. So I think this is also leading people to have not just switching jobs, but having career changes and shifts. So jumping down a little bit, but one of the big things is employees are not necessarily looking internally for that career shift. They feel they have to go outside. So if they're doing accounting, then they can't switch to marketing, right? But I think only 1 out of 3 candidates surveyed would look internally before, looking externally. So what that means is if you have a great person who knows your company, and they don't feel comfortable like raising their hand because this is this is your career path, we don't switch, you're going to lose a lot of people. So if you guys can think about that, and maybe encourage it, open up the conversation, get to know you probably know your employees, but take that extra time. What else are they looking for? Ask them why they would leave. So at least you have that knowledge. And maybe it is that career switch. Hey, I'm bored here. Okay, well, what would you want? Because if they leave, they take the knowledge with you. That's important. They take the culture with them. So if you like them, I would say try to find a home for them, because if not, they will leave. And people are taking risks on people who are taking those career changes. Most people who leave a job currently have 69% of them already had a job lined up. So even though we talk about the Great Resignation and we have a low unemployment rate, a lot of these people still did have jobs. So I think these numbers are a little bit, this huge Great Resignation, I think people are still working. I just think it's a little bit different than what we were used to. And then millennials. I see a lot of millennials have a lot of jobs on their resumes, and they shift quickly. Things to just keep thinking about when you're working with millennials or trying to recruit them. They leave their jobs because of lack of development opportunities and mobility. Mobility means career path. They want to know where they can go, and unlike before, they're not happy being in a job for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. They've proven themselves, they feel like they want the next job, which can be good and bad. And then opportunities for development. Like, this is the back thing that goes to training. If you invest in them, they feel appreciated. That's huge, and they feel you invested in them, so I think they're more likely to invest in you. So then, what else with recruiting? How has recruiting candidates changed? I'm really going through this. If you guys want to follow along, take any notes, have any questions about it, let me know. The biggest thing is, it is a candidate's market. No question. It's extremely competitive. Like we talked about the remote side of things, that ups the ante there. And then candidates have options. And sometimes I work with people who've had their companies for a long time, and I kind of have they have the old-fashioned mindset is that this candidate needs me. It's really changed, all right? They don't really need you. You need them, and you want them to want to work with you. So when you're going into these interviews, I think it's really important to take time to build rapport. Don't just jump in and ask questions. Another thing is, some clients of mine have 20-minute interviews. If this is a person you like, court them a little bit. Talk to them. Even if you know they're the person within 5 minutes you want to hire, it doesn't mean they feel the same way. So even if you're on a video call, walk them around the office, show them the cool things, have someone else jump on the call. It can be informal. That's okay. But I just really want people to remember and think about this as you're interviewing. Keep it I think more informal is great. Ask good questions. In the end, I always go through everyone's job. What are their primary responsibilities? What are their accomplishments? What did they enjoy most about the job? So that gives me an idea when I'm talking, oh, this connects. Gives you a talking point. So I try to do that for each job and get to know why they left. And then at the end, though, I always ask what their strengths are. How would you describe your personality? How would your friends describe you? And you might think these are obviously trying to get to the same answers. They are, but you get very different answers. And then one thing I like to ask is, what do you do for fun? That opens up the conversation. It makes it personal. Oh, I do that too. Or have you ever been here if you like to travel? That gives a personal connection, and that's what people remember. So besides that, got to move quickly, okay? People are applying. I'm seeing 1 to 3 weeks you're off the market. So you're also not looking at these 2, 3, 4 interviews at a time now. It's one or two, one and done or 1 and 2. So if you like them, move forward. Probability is probably 30% they're going someplace else anyway. So you can still keep interviewing if you have other people, or if you like them, try to get them back to back and get prompt feedback. If you have Teams interviews, some clients of mine wait a whole week. I'm like, guys, it's a whole week now. I can't set up the next interview, and then we have to wait on that person's schedule. So really try to be timely with that. Then, even from the get-go, candidates are asking me, what's the salary? They don't want to give me their compensation. New York just changed that law. You're not supposed to ask them, but what they're currently making. But I always ask, what is your target salary? And then what is a range you'd honestly consider? That takes the pressure off from them, right? You ask them for their goal, and then you ask them for a range, and that helps with the conversation. So if you guys are trying to figure that out, and then, people aren't going to leave typically to go backwards. So I'm like, okay, is that close to what you're making now? And then they tell me, I'm like, perfect. Why would you want to go backwards, right? So then that takes that awkwardness out. All right. So and a lot of the reason why people are not interested in talking to me is the remote piece, just so you know. Digital career fairs, I don't know if you've done them. I think they're here to stay. People seem to really like them. There's a lot of flexibility. So just be prepared if you're looking to hire. You're going to have to probably pay more than you would expect previously. And so 23% of organizations are planning to increase pay for their difficult to fill positions. I mentioned that I worked in that manufacturing for this company called Legrand, but twice last year they had to do salary increases for the manufacturing floor. Twice. And in ZipRecruiter, at one point they said that they were seeing assembly positions double in price. I think that's a little extreme. But just be aware, one time a year if you're doing salary reviews might not be enough, especially with inflation right now at 7%. And then for the hourly people who are we're all being affected, but for these gas prices that are really increasing, you guys might want to consider a $50 gas card or something. Hey guys, we feel your pain. We're here with you. Here's something. Who knows how long it's going to last? They appreciate it. That's what they look at, right? If they're coming to work or are they not coming to work, how much money? They're living paycheck to paycheck. So that's a big increase in their pay and expenses. So those are things I would just keep thinking about. Besides that, how else has COVID changed in impacting hiring? Oh, okay, so when I was talking about internally trying to do training, because people are having such a hard time filling these, some of the larger companies are really doing the cross-training internally, called job sharing as well, and creating internal mobility. So that means maybe not doing the same, like switching the career side, and that's lead to increased engagements, retention, agility. People are willing to pitch in. I mean, we all kind of get bored in our jobs, right? So if you can raise your hand and there's someone else needs it and you're doing something different, it's kind of a little bit more fun. So, and I think it also creates good teaming, community, culture. So, and it's a nice change of ideas. Because if you're doing the same thing, you're not always thinking outside the box. So there's definitely values to this. Negotiating offers. This is something you're probably going to be going back and forth on. We talked about like to keep people internally so they're not leaving. Talk about why people are where they're working, what their interests are maybe down the road, so you can keep that in mind as you're building their career path. So what can we do to retain the people that we have? Any questions on this stuff so far? Boring, okay? All right. I feel like everyone knows this stuff, so if I'm not going into enough, yeah. Yeah. So you're saying Zoom as an interview platform? You're saying Zoom as an interview platform? I mean, I think it's for the first one. I'd have him still come on site, right, if you really like him. But I think, I'll get to you in a second. I think that, just to comment on that, yes, that's nice. You'd want people to come to you. But if you're having a hard time filling it, like I said, it's a candidate's market. So if they have a good resume, maybe they just moved, you don't really know their story. I phone screen everyone before I do an interview. I call them up, spend 5 minutes. You know, why not? Are you interested in beer? What's changed? Why do you like this job? And then say, all right, well, why don't you check out my brewery and call me once you do and let me know your thoughts. Put that on them. Kind of give them that opportunity. Yeah. It's the effort there. I get it. I mean, candidates are also getting lazy. What are you going to say? Yeah. That's great. Mm-hmm. That's really what you need. It makes it personal. Ghosting. Yep. Yeah. It's funny because the next thing is, what can companies do to retain people? And the biggest thing is, 79% of people leave their jobs because they feel unappreciated at work. And other people are leaving because part of it is also that they're not recognized for their efforts and accomplishments. And I think, to your point, it's been easy not to build that personal touch as much, because you have been working from home, or we've all been very busy during COVID with a lot of things and stress in our mind, right? So people aren't necessarily taking that step to really acknowledge and talk to people. And I think that's the reason why people are leaving, because they don't have that connection anymore. And I don't care what you say, I don't care what they say, but people leave managers. They don't leave companies. If you have a bad manager, that's why people are going to leave. It's not necessarily the company or the culture as much. So I think you just asking those questions in the interview also speaks to you as a manager, right? You actually care about this kind of stuff. And that's what people are going to be looking for in an interview. It is the culture. It is the people they're coming into. If all you care about is what's essentially on my resume, you're a pretty cold company. And I probably don't have an interest in working with you. Hey, but if you took some time, and we're all busy, right? So if you took time to get to know me, build those connections, people also remember it when they're looking at the jobs. They come off, man, she skis, I ski, that's pretty cool. We're probably going to hang out after work. Like, that's what people, I think, also want. So I think it's really important. Now, when you're doing these interviews, where you are looking at these people, are you also then looking more on the soft skills? If you weren't finding them by asking those questions, were you more likely to hire someone and look at people who didn't necessarily have the exact skills you were looking for? Okay. Okay. Yep. Yep. And I think the other thing is, like, it's even for me, I have a small team. It's a lot easier, it's a lot easier to recruit for like a big company, because that one person that you're hiring doesn't have as much of an impact on that company culture. But when you have a small team, like you do, it's hard. Like, they have a big impact. I mean, I have about 4 people right now, and I'm like trying to hire one more, but they have a huge impact on such a small team. So it's also a little bit different with this dynamic, right? I think if they're going to be in person with you, you got to have those in-person meetings. Maybe not the first one, but you get to know them, have that beer with them, take them out. And I think that is good. I mean, obviously you guys are in the beer industry. Hopefully you guys are doing a drink over a beer afterwards and getting to know what that person's like off-site. So long-term, they can be great in person and put on a nice show sometimes on the interview. But if you take them out of the office, then you really get to know them. So, yeah. Yep. I mean, yeah, we all want that, right? You want people to look it up. It says something about them and their care. What level, though? I think that's the other thing, right? I don't disagree, right? That is how it should be, right? That's how I think we were kind of raised. You do all your homework, and it couldn't be easier right now to do any homework. You have to, on your phone, pulling it up before you get in there. Yes, I agree with you. It should be done. But if they have a good resume, you're also going to make the phone. I don't think it doesn't matter. I'd still try to talk to a few people if you have time, and then pick the best one. But don't drag your feet. If they have the soft skills and everything else, and they have a good reason, fine. Especially if they're working. Maybe if you found them that day, you called, you set up the interview, okay, give them a little leniency. If you gave them a few days, okay, not so understanding. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Doesn't really help you. So the other thing there is, guys, thinking through that. First, the first call, they might not know you, okay? But if you set up the interview and then they don't know you, okay, that is a red flag. Secondly, some onus is on you guys, though, is what do you do when you set up an interview? Do you send an interview confirmation out? So when I think it's very important, when I set up an interview with someone, I send them an interview confirmation, which includes who they're going to be meeting with and their titles. I think a lot of people don't necessarily think to do this. Well, if you don't know who you're talking to and you don't know the structure of the interview, it causes anxiety for these people. And if you're going to do a group panel interview, I'm not a fan of them. I think it makes it less personal. You can't really get to know people, make those cool connections. So I suggest staying away from them, at least up for the first one or two. If you're going to do it in person, you can go out with a group or something. But if you're going to have multiple people interviewing, have them talk on maybe different topics. Or have one soft skill question to each person ask. So then you can all have something to talk about afterwards. But I think the big thing there is, guys, just make sure you're sending out interview confirmations with their name, people they're meeting, and their titles. And then at that point, hopefully they can go on LinkedIn. If you guys don't have a LinkedIn profile, I know I push all my candidates to go look. Do your homework, and then also that creates talking points. Yeah, is that not really a question, right? But, so just to retain people that you have, I think you really want to make sure that they feel appreciated. Make sure that they have their voices heard. People, it really does matter, because now people are not, it's not all about the paycheck anymore. They want the company culture. Make sure they're engaged and they feel connected. Give them rewarding work, right? Maybe give them a new project, set some goals, follow up with those goals. So they also know if they're doing a good job. I think millennials do like that as well. They want to make sure that they're doing well. So they need that communication a lot more than what you've seen with Gen X's and more of the baby boomers. Make sure, you're listening to employees, that you're offering that career growth. And because people leave managers, if you know you have a manager who's not that great, or is not really empathetic, or doesn't show that much compassion, and doesn't have those soft skills, this is a large, we're doing a lot of research on this, trying to bring some things together that we felt were valuable, but this was a recurring theme. Like, get training for those managers, okay? You can do they have like these apps that you can download. You can get career coaching. Those are things that I think will really go a long way, especially as people are now navigating coming back into the office and everything else. Yeah, we talked about that. So another thing is, like, with this daycare and people with all the stress going on, some companies are also looking at flexible hours. So maybe you always had someone working 40 hours, but really, do they need to work 40 hours for that job? All because it's always been. So some are like, okay, we can drop it down to 32:30. We have a little bit more flexibility. So instead of losing that person, you're working with them, paying a little bit less. So hopefully, you guys, it's kind of a win-win. So that could be something if you know someone's really struggling with all their hours, having the flexibility there. So according to LinkedIn data in 2020, internal mobility was up 20% since the onset of COVID. But they were showing that employees stay 41% longer at companies that hire internally compared to those who don't. And then they also increase the focus. So if you can hire internally, I think you're going to have more stability. And to be competitive in this changing world, what do you need to do? Think about flexibility, work from home options, and letting people create their schedules. So maybe it was 8 to 5 typically, but hey, can they work 2 hours after their kids go to bed? Or once they put them on the bus? Does it really matter? If you have their core hours, can we work around that? And offer this employment, development, and training. Frontline workers too, right? If they don't have the means for education and you can provide them that, like that's a whole new world for them, right? That's something they might have dreamed of and you can make it a reality. That's huge. So Chipotle, we all know them. Their director of talent said retention rate was 3.5 times higher among employees enrolled in an education assistant program for crew members, and 7.5 times those folks are more likely to move into management. Because there's a huge cost to hiring people, training people, right? So critically think about that. How much is it for like maybe an associate's degree at a community college versus how much you're going to pay, invest, and lose time in having someone leave? And typically, if they're there, they're staying there for the whole course of those 2 years. So in the end, I'm not sure on the tax side of things from a business how that really works, but something about that should be looking into. Another big thing that people are seeing is during COVID, people are really gotten into technology and want that training. So they're calling it upskilling. So keep that going. Whatever that is, however you're doing it, if it's Zoom, if it's Teams meetings, what you're doing, keep that going. I don't think it's that expensive. People are really also looking at diversity. So keeping that, try to have a diverse focus, not just it's age, it's race, it's nationality, it's education levels. So you really want these employees to have a strong moral compass and have the company have a strong moral compass. They're looking at this more than you think, and work-life integration. Benefits are more important than they've been before, so that flexibility is huge. 75% of employees, I've seen that kind of across a lot of different things, about 75% still in a hybrid model. There's definitely a value of having people in the office, right? I think you still need those face-to-face meetings if you can do it. Keep that personal touch, but even C-levels really felt like having this was a large benefit. People were more engaged, actually got more work done, less distraction, I think a little bit less stress on their plate because people weren't walking into their door every second. And honestly, so many of these things kept talking about empathy and having a supportive attitude for their employees was just went so far. Another thing is if you get people working from home, like, have you thought about giving people actually money to put into a home office or providing them, some more resources so they can have a little bit more flexibility. And then healthcare. Healthcare is huge right now. So looking at what you offer for that. And I put a whole section on this is mental health support. It has been I think so many people, we had so much isolation going on, so much stress. People are at home, people are raising their kids, teaching their kids, becoming teachers and parents and still working, having a lot of unknowns, the stress of COVID. Like, it's really, really taken a toll. You have seen it, I'm sure you're reading the news and listening to it, but like suicide rates are just sky high right now. And these are young kids too. if parents are stressing about their kids, they can't really be focusing as well on work, right? So I think we need to think about this more than we have ever in the past. Like, what are we doing to provide support? Some companies, I think this is, I don't know what your healthcare benefits are, obviously, but like one company said they would only pay for you can only go 6 times to go see a counselor or a therapist. Now they're increasing it to 8, and they're eliminating the copay. Just that copay alone for some people is really a thing, right? So if it can have that lasting impact and they can de-stress and actually focus when they're at work working, that's a huge benefit. And then they're healing, they're helping their family, overall huge. So I would encourage you guys, talk to your providers, talk to your managers. Telehealth for this is a big thing too. Also, talking about destigmatizing it, right? I think having a mental health day, having come in and talk, make it a conversation piece. It does have a stigma attached to it. I think it's getting way better, but men, I think, typically are less likely to do it than females, is what I've seen. Take that stigma off. Be compassionate, empathetic to this. It is real. I mean, as soon as COVID is over, now we have the war going on in Ukraine. This is a huge stress. Gas prices are rising. Inflation is hitting. These things are building. I think they're building on all of us, and we might not even realize it. So there's a whole thing on here, but look through that. Think about how you guys can focus on mental health. And I hate, the idea that so many suicides and these kids just struggling, and parents are struggling too. So keep thinking about that. 8 minutes. Okay, diversity and inclusion. One thing just to highlight about this is we are talking about only 5.3% of workers whose highest credential is a high school diploma have the ability to work from home. That's a huge disproportionate. And those are the people money means the most to, gas means the most to right now. So versus 24% from people who have a bachelor's degree. So if you're looking at that internal equity, diversity, when you're recruiting for it, keep that in mind when you're recruiting. Maybe you don't always ask the same people. Who do they know? Go out and search for that. There's a lot of different websites you can do this from. And low-wage workers across the board were hit a lot harder. And diversity, though, is a huge thing when people are looking at where they're going to join next. So if you need help with that, if you want some more ideas on that, this QR code gives you access to both these documents online, and there's 3 other documents on there. One is talking about recruiting for diversity, breaks it right down. There's all these different things, topics. So if you guys do that, if you have questions, I'm happy to talk to you guys about that down the road as well. There's some search guides in there for Boolean searches, and websites where you can go to post your jobs if you're struggling on that kind of stuff. Another things about diversity and inclusion is people in their 50s and 60s, if they're switching jobs, seem to have a harder time assimilating and adjusting. So just keep that in mind if you're doing that. I think that's good advice, and wasn't really thinking about that as much. I do place a lot of people in their 50s and 60s, but especially if people are going back into work. Diversity training is a big thing you guys can be doing. People can come on site. You guys can create diversity clubs or teams and have them kind of lead it as a company. People enjoy doing it. It's something they're passionate about. And then okay, also talking about diversity and inclusion on the healthcare side, it's interesting. Telehealth seems to be used more with those with higher education. So as you're looking at the benefits, if you have a way of tracking that, keep that in mind. It's probably the lower level people who are also being more affected by the stress. So figure out ways to encourage that. That about wraps up most of what I had to talk about. I kind of reconcluded it, but remote is here. Compensation's gonna be higher. Candidates are pickier. Culture matters. Show empathy. If your managers don't have it, if you're not showing it to your employees, train people on it. Sometimes you have to be trained on it. And now people really want to work to live. Work to live, right? Yeah. So I think that's about it. Any other questions or comments? I don't. I can do a little digging and see if I can give you the documents are on the last page over there, but I can also get some. But I think there's a lot out there, and career coaching. If I have some coaches who come on site, some of my clients. Other ones do webinars, and I do know a guy in Syracuse I could recommend. I've taken some of them as well. So, yeah. Anything else? Hopefully this was valuable. Really appreciate your time. This is my email. Like I said, if you have that QR code, I'll add some other stuff to it. I had like a LinkedIn recruiter guide I put together last year. So if you're trying to recruit on LinkedIn, you need some help with that. That's there. Boolean search advice. I'll be adding to it. So if you check it today and then maybe next week when you get home, hopefully I'll add a couple more things. All right, thank you.